Greetings all. This is an overview of Dream Children a Reverie by Charles Lamb. Let's get on to it. So, to talk about Charles Lamb, he was born on February 10th, 1775 in London, and his parents were John Lamb and Elizabeth Field. And he was the youngest child among three living children, and he's also called as the Prince of English Essayists. The father of English essayists is Bacon. The prince is Charles Lamb. His pen name is Elia, and he also wrote a collection of essays called Essays of Elia, which is one of his famous works. And his sister is Mary Ann Lamb, and she was the one who taught him to read at a very early age. And he did read very voraciously. He loved especially Gulliver's Travels, books like that. And Mary Ann Lamb and Charles Lamb together, they wrote the work called Tales from Shakespeare. And not just Tales from Shakespeare, Mary Ann Lamb has contributed to most of Charles Lamb's works as well. And Lamb's essays in particular, they have this unique combination of wit, reflection, anecdote, and fancy. And this essay is is a very good example for you to witness all this. So moving on into the essay, Dream Children a Reverie. The very word reverie itself means a dream, something that is fantasy. So the title itself tells us that the children are a fantasy. A dream like children, they are fantastical creatures. So there, the clue is right there in the title itself. So when the essay begins, it starts with the narrator's great grandmother Field. This grandmother Field, she lived in Norfolk in a huge mansion. They were not rich. Okay, they were not at all rich, and this you can see in this essay, Old China. And this great grandmother, she was taking care of the house for another people, someone who owned the house. And there's one thing that he talks about in the house, that is, on top of the fireplace, you have a huge portrait of the Children in the Wood ballad. The picture I've given you here, you can see two children wandering off, their worried faces, they're wandering off into the wood. So the thing is, these two children were abandoned by the parents, and they were left into the woods, almost like Hansel and Gretel, but then they do not find their way back, nor did they find the evil witch. So ultimately they died because of hunger. They didn't have any food, right? So, and then a red sparrow comes around and pays its last respects for these little children. So this is the ballad. We don't know the original version of it. What the original thing is, what exists now tells the story, because this is something that was passed down in the oral tradition. And there's also this contrast between ancient and modern in the text, because the mansion is actually a very ancient one. The new owners who bought them were, trying to modernize it. And he says the things were not in harmony because the building is ancient, but the furniture and all are very modern. So things didn't go together. There was no unity there. And again, at this point, we learn the name of the children to whom he's addressing the entire essay to. The names are Alice and John. So we learn more about this grandmother, Mrs. Field. She is a very good person, and she's very religious, and not just that, she's an amazing dancer. And we also learn that she lived with cancer for a long time, and ultimately she died because of it. And when she did die, almost the entire town came in there to pay respect to her. She was such an amazing person, such an impressive person. Another thing, here the narrator goes on to talk about his personal experiences when he lived in that mansion. Not lived per se, he visited the mansion when he was during his holidays with his sibling. So he talks about the ghost of two innocent children. So probably you have these two innocent children coming around everywhere. And here, see, Children in the Wood ballad. See there? Yeah, so there again two innocent children, and here you have Alice and John, two innocent children, and here a fiction of imagination, a fantastical creatures, two innocent children. So this keeps on repeating as if to say is that this is not true, the children are not true. It's a foreboding thing. And next he shares about his happy days at his grandmother's place. Now generally when little boys want to have fun, during holidays and all, they run around, they do adventures, they do all sorts of mischiefs. But the narrator was not like that. The narrator, he says, spent hours by himself. He just used to gaze upon all the beautiful fruits, the old busts of 12 Caesars, the every Caesar, and he loved lying on the fresh air, basking in the orange tree and watching the day's fish. See, he says, I had more pleasure in these busy, idle diversions than in the sweet flavors of peaches, nectarine, oranges, and such like common baits of children. See, usually children, when they see a peach, they don't look at it and be amazed at how beautiful it is, or what they do is they pluck it and they eat it. They enjoy when they eat it. But this narrator, he doesn't want to eat it. He just wants to look at it and enjoy seeing it. And he also says, the huge mansion had vast empty rooms, and the hangings and all were worn out because it's very old, right? And the fluttering tapestry, the carved oaken panels with the gliding, almost rubbed and spacious old-fashioned gardens. You should see the imagery here; it's very rich. As we read through it, we get to look, experience, or imagine all these things happening. So there's rich imagery and also a beautiful description of the castle he's giving here. And we move on to, there's another character in this essay which is quite prominent, that is John L., the uncle of the children Alice and John, which means this brother, the elder brother actually of the narrator. So he says about this John L., his brother, this brother mounted the most mettlesome hordes. He used to join with the hunters, and he had too much spirit. He could not, kept inside, pent up within the house boundaries. So he had to go. He used to go out. He used to explore. He is like the stark contrast of the narrator. And there's another thing. When the narrator was lame, when he was very young, this brother John L. used to carry him around wherever he went. And he also mentions that he feels guilty because he did not return this favor. When his brother John L. fell sick and became lame in the later part of his life, the narrator did not help him, carry him here and there, like he was being carried around. So that's why he feels sorry for that. Not sorry, more like guilty about that. And he says, when he died, though had not been dead an hour, it seemed as if he had died a great while ago. See, when John L. died, like literally when he stopped breathing, that was not the time when he died. He died at the exact moment when he learned that he couldn't walk again. That he lost his love for life or will to live after he learned that. Since then, he's just been, a breathing corpse. And he also notes here, in a very sentimental or emotional way, that he misses his brother. And he also mentions this brother John L. was like a limb to him, like a part of his body. And when he died, he also felt like the part of his body also has died. It's no more with him. And we come to another important character. This is Alice W-N. This is the mother of Alice and John. And the girl Alice, this character Alice, the mother character, it's based on a girl named Anne Simmons, a real life person. Actually, Lamb was in love with this Anne Simmons, but then he courted her, but then she denied his courtship, and she ended up marrying Bartram. He tells here, children of Alice call Bartram the father. So he says, how when he looks into Alice, the child, the daughter, the girl, when he looks into the girl's eye, the young girl's eye, he's able to see Alice, the mother, through that eyes. It's as if they both are the same. They both are the same because Lamb has created the illusion of young Alice based on the old Alice. Old Alice in the sense Anne Simmons. That's why they look the same. Okay, and as we move on, as he finishes the story about Alice and says that children of Alice call parts of the father. Slowly, the children are being taken into oblivion, which means they slowly disappear, and ultimately they all vanish. And he finds himself quietly seated in his bachelor armchair. So he says the word bachelor, which means he's never been married. So the entire thing was purely imaginary. The part about the children, him narrating it to them, and the way he says, Alice did this, Alice did that, or John gave a smile to Alice, or how they nudged, how they were so eager. Every small description is purely from his imagination. Things that he wanted to happen but didn't happen. And another thing, whenever he mentions cousin Bridget in the essay, he's actually talking about his sister Mary. As I already told you, in almost all of his work, you'll also see the sister character there, because Charles Lamb spent a lot of his time, almost most of his life, taking care of his sister. Okay, overall as the essay, it brings into English literature the personal or familiar essay. This is a very personal essay, and when you read it, you find it so familiar, because we also end up doing like this. And the style of the essay is so gentle, it's old-fashioned, and irresistibly it's attractive. So when you start reading it, you can't stop reading it, and there's a certain beauty towards it. The entire essay, the way it is worded, the way the imagery are put forth, it is so attractive. And it also records the pathetic joy in the author's unfortunate domestic life. See, what happened to Charles Lamb, or what happened to narrator in this case, in this essay, is not something happy. He is leading a very lonely life. People whom he loved have either denied his love, or they left him. They don't live in the world with the author anymore, the narrator anymore. But still, there's something, a tinge of joy in it, a tinge of happiness in it, a tinge of beauty in it. That's what he highlights in this. I've told you, he makes his sadness beautiful, or rather, he shows the beauty that resides in sadness. Sadness need not always be melancholic and so depressing. There's sometimes beauty towards sadness as well, and that Lamb has brought out in this essay. And ultimately, he gives expressions to his unfulfilled longings and desires. So whatever he could not have in his real life, he has made it happen through fiction, through imagination, and through this essay. So that is all about Dream Children Ever Every. Thank you.